Okay, I'm very afraid of these microphones. We'll see how this works. My name is Chris Alexander. I'm a former editor of Fangoria, founder and editor of Delirium magazine, director, writer, musician, and the author of this book, Corman Poe, which chronicles the 8 amazing Edgar Allan Poe horror films directed by Roger Corman, most of them starring Vincent Price, and one of them, the grand finale, starring this lovely lady to my right. Lady Rowena, Lady Ligeia, Elizabeth Shepard. Please put your hands together. I came all the way from Toronto for the explicit purpose that I get a chance to meet you, which is hilarious to me because, as it turns out, you were in Toronto just before I left, and you have a long history of living in Toronto, but we'll get to that.
Yes,
we'll get to that in a bit. Elizabeth, thank you again for being here.
My great pleasure.
I think all of our great pleasure to get a chance to meet you
Yeah.
and to talk about the movie we're going to talk about. But, you know, Ligeia being such an important piece of horror film history, it's certainly an important piece of Roger's canon, and an important piece of your puzzle, it really is only just a footnote in a massive career that has spanned generations. But first I'd like to know, and it's a very obvious question, but it's an important one. When did the acting bug first bite you? When did you realize that this was the muse you wanted to follow?
Well, I'm a missionary's daughter. So I was brought up in Burma my first few years. And when we came back to England, from Burma to London in the Blitz, oh my God, that was a bit of a change. My mother used to go to missionary meetings to talk about Burma, and she would be dressed in Burmese costume, and I would be dressed in Burmese costume, 5 and 6 years old, and I would do Burmese dancing. So those were my first public appearances, and I enjoyed it. So I guess it came from there.
So it was a kind of, in a weird way, kind of your first, like kind of an addiction in some respect, and getting that kind of admiration, adoration, that shared energy from the audience while you were performing.
And also, you know, getting up and enjoying doing something.
And you knew you just had to do it again and again and again.
Yes, yes.
How about professionally? Because your early days in England as an actor, you did a lot of television.
Yes.
But then you worked with some pretty heavy hitters. You worked with Michael Powell.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
director of Peeping Tom.
Yes. So when I started in England, theatre was it. And I was very lucky that I was able to not go to drama school, but go to repertory companies where I learned my trade on the job. And so I did a lot of theatre to begin with, and then London repertory and London West End. And then my very first film, as you say, wasn't I lucky to work with Michael Powell? Oh my goodness.
And what film was that, Elizabeth?
The Queen's Guards. So I was in a movie with the Queen because it was filmed at the Queen's Guards. And Michael Powell wanted to make a film to show that the soldiers who were dressed up in all that fancy costume at the Trooping of the Colour, in fact, were working soldiers. And so the film that we made took over a period of 10 years, and it was in the time when they would make very long films with an intermission. And so it showed the soldiers. There were 3 particular friends over the period of 10 years, and they were in action in Aden and various other places. And Judith Stott and I were the 2 girlfriends who kept changing partners over the period of the 10 years. And so the film that we completed was an epic. But the producers then said to Michael Powell, "Oh no, we think these long films have had their day. We want you to cut it in half." Well, so he did. He had to do that. And that is why Michael Powell then never did want that film as it was released in his repertoire. But Thelma Schoonmaker, in fact, is trying to put the whole thing together again. But Michael Powell, what a character. When I went for my audition, I was told he will bully but whatever you do, don't cry. So he did bully me, and I didn't cry, but I got the part. So that was wonderful to work with one of the masters at the very beginning. Wasn't I lucky?
Wow.
And then, of course, I went from Michael Powell to Roger Corman.
Two very different directors.
Very well, both classy guys. Never for a minute underestimate Roger Corman. We'll be talking a lot about this tomorrow.
You know, I've read interviews with you before. You know, Roger, his entire career, and Roger's a good friend of mine too, and always got saddled with it. He was fine with that. As you know, Roger was a very amicable guy. He went along with the flow. King of the Bees, and one of the beautiful things I've read that you said about him is that you forget King of the Bees, he's king of the entire alphabet.
Yes, king of the entire alphabet. Yes, because of what he contributed to American cinema.
Absolutely, yeah.
The directors, Scorsese, the other one.
Coppola, Scorsese.
Yes, absolutely, and actors.
The list is in.
And not only that, but his company brought foreign films,
Right.
so that the American public saw cinema from worldwide. And what a classy guy. He and Vincent Price were together, the two of them, such gentlemen, very outstanding men. Nice to be around these men.
And very muted egos too, really. I mean, they're both of them very educated, very literate, very intelligent. Roger had studied literature at Oxford.
Oh.
He was an engineer. He had a degree in
Absolutely.
engineering. But yet, and though he took, I think, I would presume, took the job of directing seriously, I don't think you had the same stresses, probably the same warnings about working with Roger that you did Michael Powell, for instance.
Right, and Roger Corman, actually, I'll take the water here.
And actually, while we're having a little quick water break, could we close the doors? And Elizabeth, I want to just move this a little bit away from your mouth because we're getting that.
They're coming to fix it.
Oh, thank goodness, because it's a frightening sound.
Also, that if you push the microphones back a little bit toward you, that may not the speakers coming back into the microphone.
Oh, so do you need us to move
No,
it?
no, just move it toward you, that's all.
Well, you want it to work.
Want it close, want it close.
Take that out.
Okay,
Yeah.
so start? Okay.
Yeah, because I think that'll.
Okay.
I think we have the same issue.
Yeah, no matter what.
We just have to turn it
It's the walls.
I have somebody coming up.
Okay, we'll grin and bear it in the interim. It adds
It's on its way.
it adds suspense. It adds suspense to the experience. You know, Roger started with the Poe films. His first film, as you know, was
Yes.
called The House of Usher, and that was Roger's way to kind of, you know, he was making those movies back to back for American International
Yes.
Pictures, and he said,
Yes,
well, look,
yes.
boys, instead of 3 of these black and white pot boilers, let's make one color film. And his pinky went up a little bit, and he was able to indulge his passion for Poe and create a film that, although it was sold as a horror film, was approaching more literature. Now, the cycle went through overt horror with Pit and the Pendulum, Premature Burial, but I would say by the time he gets to you, by the time he gets to England and shoots The Tomb of Ligeia, especially those ruined abbeys and out in the countryside,
Oh, yes.
he was leaning probably the most explicitly in the cycle towards actually creating a piece of Gothic fine art, fine literature.
Absolutely, because he and Vincent never thought of this as horror films, never horror films. They are Gothic stories based on Poe's tales of mystery and imagination. What could be better than that? And so for his last film, he wanted it to be the best, and so it was an epic. We had 5 whole weeks, not 5 days.
That was a lot for Roger.
It's 5 weeks with a whole week on location, beautiful locations in England. And in order to find out Abbey, he went through all the heritage sites and chose Castle Acre, which was just perfect. And so these wonderful settings, and so when I'm on my horse and I'm going through, and then I meet Vincent at the tomb, and then of course when we open the door to go inside, then we're in the studio. But these 5 weeks on location, beautiful locations, And so he also got Robert Town to write a wonderful script which gave Vincent and I something to play. But I have to tell you something about this. When I was first cast, I read the story and fell in love with Ligeia herself. And so when I read the script, I was horrified. I was absolutely dismayed on Ligeia's account. And I went to Roger and said, Roger, this isn't Ligeia. Rowena is just a subplot in the original song. And so Roger said, Elizabeth, an opium dream isn't very cinematic. So he said, Robert and I found something that was also in period that we could use instead, which was the mesmerism, which of course works beautifully.
Well, especially that's your signature scene in the film.
Yes.
When you're being mesmerized, when
That's
you're being
right.
hypnotized, and this is again, hats off to you. What a remarkable performance where you definitely weave between these two characters within a single performance.
Yes.
Did Roger, was he instrumental in directing that? Or did
No,
he
I remember when we, at the end of one day, because we were all theatre actors, I mean the cream of theatre character actors in the film, wonderful, wonderful cast. And so, Roger said, oh, we've got half an hour at the end of the day. He said, oh, we're just to the master of this scene. So yes, we all got ready and we just did it. Because we were all theatre actors and it's a wonderful scene to play. And so, well, let's see if... I have a one-neck drink with blue. Do you wear it? Yes, I do. Will you wear it when I come? Yes, I'm going to the room with my old man. Do you have a one-neck drink with blue? Yes, I wear it. Yes, I do. I will. You man need not lie among the angels, or lie in death forever, save for the weakness of his feeble will. I will always be your wife. Well,
That was an incredible treat for everybody here, and I've definitely got goosebumps. Thank you for
of
that.
course, because I was thrilled that I was to play this dual role. And because I had studied the play, I knew who Ligeia was, particularly her voice, of course, which is talked a lot about in the story. And so Robert Town created Rowena. And because it's a love story, he said to Roger, oh, well, it's a love story. Vincent is too old. I think that Richard Chamberlain should play the man. Oh my God, can you imagine Richard Chamberlain as Rowan Fell? Of course, Roger said, absolutely not. I mean, Vincent was only 53. And so he had black hair, and of course those wonderful glasses.
Iconic glasses.
Yes, and so I have to tell you that Rowena had no problem falling in love with Vincent.
Now, were you familiar with, Vincent, I always find with horror pictures, and we'll call this a horror picture, you find actors kind of not, if not on the way down, and somewhat on the decline, young actors coming up and they kind of intersect within the genre. At this point, Vincent kind of got on board the horror train because he was a character actor, he was an established actor in Hollywood, and he found a second life in the genre, becoming, of course, one of the most important names in the genre. But were you aware of even who Vincent, you being a fine British actress at the stage?
No,
you didn't even know who he was when you...
This is before I immigrated. So I knew all about Hammer films, yes, and Martin and everything. I'd never heard of the Poe series or Roger Corman. And so I knew Vincent from Laura. I thought I was So when I met him, Vincent Price was totally underestimated as a classical actor. A brilliant classical actor. I mean, he started with Helen Hayes on Broadway with Queen Victoria and Prince Albert. And how many of you ever did see his Oscar Wilde play at the end of his life? Brilliant, brilliant. And so, because it was a love story, they needed a young woman. I was 27 years old at the time. They needed a young woman who was not an ingenue. And also, because of the Pole language and the whole setting, they needed somebody who was experienced in the classics. I was a Shakespeare actress, as he was an actor. And so it was wonderful that I was just right to partner with him and play those two roles. And the more I see it, I'm so proud of this film. It has really stood the test of time. I feel it is now an absolute classic. And it is a double love story where Ligeia's love, which is passionate, but it is possessive. She won't let him go. But Rowena's love is, in the end, redemptive, because she does love him, and she releases him from the spell when she understands what is happening. And so I feel that what Robert Town had written in there was something that Vincent and I could really take to the nth degree. And that is why I think the relationships in the film give it a kind of depth that you don't find in the other Poe stories.
And it grounds it in some accessible reality.
Yes, absolutely.
Roger would do that throughout the series, add an element of romance to make it a little bit more accessible
Yes.
to the masses. Now, yes, and there's also that great element of, Roger always had a bit of subtext in his pictures, but there's also an element of perversity in the picture as well. It's a little bit of necrophilia going on there, let's put it right out there.
Well, yes, I mean, it's there. Story. Yes, yes. But there again, you know, I mean, in the original story, this is what he believes is happening, but he has established early on that he is now an opium addict. And this is what he has dreamed of and what he wants with all his heart. And so whether he actually makes it happen or whether it does happen, who knows?
Now, you mentioned it is a love story it's a love triangle between Ligeia, Rowena, and Verdun. But it's actually a double love triangle, kind of, isn't it? Because John Westbrook's character as well is also in love with you, so he's sparring for your attentions too.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about working with John, who had previously appeared in Mask of the Red Death, but he played the Red Death.
That's right.
Right? He was the physical embodiment of that. But here he actually has a substantial role.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about working with John.
Well, John, I mean, again, a wonderful actor, and you know, the suitable fiancée for Rowena, except that she, as my father says, you know, she's so willful, and of course, when she sees this other extraordinary person, guess instantly is attracted to it. Yes. But the fact that his love for her, and he then becomes my confidant when I am terribly upset about what is happening, because having had our wonderful honeymoon, then, as we know, we're very, very happy together in the coach coming home, but as soon as we enter the Abbey, the glasses go on. And then, I'm never with him. And so John then we have these wonderful scenes together where I am confiding in him, and he is the one who finally untangles the whole mystery with Oliver Johnson. And I believe that when I do end up with him in the end, then we've kind of earned that relationship between us.
It's one hell of a courting period, isn't it? You know, W.C. Fields, that famous line, which I'll screw up so I won't even try, but about working with children. Don't, basically, to that effect. Here you did. You worked with at least one cat, but I'm sure that there were probably cat stunt doubles.
I have to tell you that the amateur cat, who was
amateur, not the professional cat,
because the cat that is on the tomb was a cat who belonged to one of the women in Sawtham, the village.
Where was somebody's actual pet cat.
Yes, a real cat. But that cat was the best actor. Because when that cat looked at Rowena, oh my, I knew something was going on.
It was a method cat.
Brilliant. He was wonderful, that cat. And then at the very end, it was practically the last shot we did on location when then I am Ligeia in the tomb, in the coffin. And the cat jumps and Vincent swipes the cat off. And he swiped the cat who ran off and got lost. And so, I mean, even Roger stopped for a minute or two so that we could go and look for him. And I hope they found him.
Oh, you don't know? You don't know if they
No, I don't. I assume they did. Of course they would find him at the end. But that cat, I enjoyed playing with as a fellow actor. But the professional cats, oh my. That cat that I played with most, who had the glasses tied to its face, that cat couldn't bear those glasses. Oh my. Oh. So I had to pretend, my acting then I had to pretend I was being menaced. This cat, and the cat, when we both had to ascend those stairs and those bells, which were extremely loud. Oh, the cat absolutely hated that. And if it wasn't that, it was probably another cat. That was the glasses cat. And then there would be the cat who would come and haunt me in my room. And so I would be standing there, and the cat wrangler would be off screen throwing the cats at me. So I would get... that was another experience. So I had the birds in the other film, and the cats in this film.
Well, we'll get to the bird in a little bit, but before we guess, a radically different but probably more problematic experience, which we'll talk about. But back to the method. We'll jump off from the method cat. Roger working with actors. We know that Roger early in his career wanted to, being an engineering guy, he wanted to put the machine together efficiently. And he wanted to understand actors, so he enrolled in method classes, right, in New York?
Yes, absolutely. He went to the actor's studio.
Right.
So to learn what our routine was, how we worked.
And that's how we found that's how we discovered Jack Nicholson, Juan Anders, all these actors that he would end up creating their stardom. But can you talk about, Roger had been working as a director for quite a few years.
Yes,
So by the time he got to you, talk to him about as an actor's director.
He was an actor's director because before we started, he would talk to all of us extensively about our character. He would talk to Vincent, he would talk to me, he would talk to the other main actors so that we would all be on the same page and decide exactly how the characters behaved. We were all on the same wavelength about how we were telling the story and their part in the story. And so then, having had this discussion with all of us separately, he then entrusted the roles to us, as far as the acting was concerned. And so Vincent and I would rehearse together a great deal. In fact, I think that practically the first words that I had with Vincent when I met him on the set is, hello, Mr. Price, would you like to rehearse? I don't think he heard that very often. But he and I worked very, very closely together, discussing our relationship and how it developed. Well, our two relationships. And so all that was taken care of before we shoot, so that when we get on the set, we don't have to talk about that there, and we could just leave it to Roger, who was brilliant at telling the story visually. The way that Roger Corman would set up his shots, brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. And usually he would be filming what we are doing. But there was one particular scene I remember where Vincent and I, just after we've met, when Rowena arrives and he attacks me, and then we are together and there's a wonderful shot behind a screen which has this elaborate pattern on it. And so in order that we would be exactly right, our faces within the pattern, that we had to be extremely accurate about our marks and where exactly we were. But that was the only time I remember him being that exact. On the other hand, we would rehearse the scene, play the scene, and then the camera would shoot what we are doing. And so we could concentrate on relating to each other, rather than having to think about, oh, I turn this way to the camera and all that, except for that one scene. So he was wonderful with actors, because he understood how we worked and had made sure that he did understand actors and take our art as seriously as he was taking his own art. I would say that he is underestimated as an actor's director. You know, this idea of him sort of throwing on these films. And I think indeed, you know, with a lot of these young directors, particularly early on, you know, he would say, you want to be a director? All right, here is a not very good script, and here is not quite enough money. Now take them and learn how to make a film. And that's how they did learn how to make a film. Scorsese and...
But he had an eagle eye for talent. So again, hiring actors, he knew instinctually that he was hiring the best people for the job.
Yes.
So he didn't have to, pardon my French, fuck around with them too much,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
Yes. And as I say, you know, both he and Vincent, extremely classy and accomplished men in every other way, not just in their film world. And so it was wonderful to be in their company. And also the fact that they both loved language. And I think that doing the Poe stories, I mean, the fact that the Poe's language, because I know when I do a recording of Ligeia, and to read Edgar Allan Poe out loud, you see what wonderful language, but extremely fluent language. It doesn't seem like language. His storytelling is brilliant. And like with Shakespeare, having that kind of vocabulary is so exciting, because we're losing vocabulary now, which is why Poe and Shakespeare and people who love language and use language is so important.
You know, back to Vincent before we move on, but Roger told me that he thinks that Vincent delivered his best performances when he did his stint in England on the last two pictures.
Yes.
Because Roger was working with very seasoned theatrical actors who understood the language,
Yes.
and so therefore he was forced to improve himself, to bring
Well,
his A
I
game.
think that it meant that not to improve himself, he could do what he would really do, which he was not allowed or given the scope to do in so many of those other films. Because, I mean, as I say, he was a brilliant, classical, serious actor, and should never, ever for a minute be underestimated there. Aside from being the most delightful man, and raconteur, but so accomplished, you know, in art and cooking, and a Renaissance man.
And a lover of life. He just
Oh,
he
yes,
spent life on
yes.
the house.
And such fun. I remember in the car one day when we were on location, I hadn't been able to get to the bank, and I said, "Oh, Vincent, could you lend me some money till I can get to the bank?" He said, "Oh, of course, darling." And he took out of his pocket a small wad of white paper and unfolded it and unfolded it and unfolded it some more to reveal, in those days, what was a very large white £5 note, which would be more like £500 now. And so he thrust it at me and said, "There you are, darling, keep the change." That was the kind of flourish that he had. And nobody ever had a bad word to say about him, ever. A lovely man.
let's talk briefly about, so the other day I posted a picture on my social media of you as Emma Peel.
Ah.
Okay, and I said, here she is, the OG Emma Peel before, you know, and so many people came up. I had no idea that there was another incarnation of this character. Of course, we're talking about TV's The Avengers, and Emma Peel, famously played by Diana Rigg. You're looking at the original Emma Peel right here. Can you talk a little bit about your brief dalliance in that iconic show?
Yes. That was quite another story. So, Honor Blackman, of course, had been the original Kathy Bates.
Gale.
Yes. Anyway, yes, Mr. Steed here.
Oh yeah, I didn't even notice. There it is.
And so I was very, very big on television at the time, and Julian Wintle, this new producer, had bought the series. And so he cast me as Emma Peel, M. Peel. You know.
Yes.
And so Elizabeth, he said, I bought this and we're going to do it on film, not tape, so it's going to be 10 times better. He said, and then the fatal words, and I welcome your own ideas. And unfortunately, I took him at his word. I inundated them with ideas. I was excited, and I thought that, well, all sorts of things, like, does it have to be black leather? Why can't it be red leather? And anyway, I lasted an episode and a half. Because they said, well, Elizabeth, you know, we'll get it right in 6 months. I said, well, why can't we get it right now? So I think that Patrick McNee thought, oh, I think she may be a little too assertive here. Anyway, that's the story of that. But I am in official history of the Avengers. They do admit and honor the fact that I was the first Emma Peel, and then Diana Rigg, of course, whom you all know. But I'm very pleased. It didn't become just, you know, I keep the pictures, and it amuses me now. It was no fun at the time, but now it very much amuses me. So that is the inside story.
Maybe John Steve knows. You know, the pictures exist. Does any footage exist from any of those?
I think the only thing that exists is like her hand in the book in the first episode.
Yes, apparently my hand. I've been
Yes.
getting residuals for that ever since. But there's one still of me as Emma Peel that I have on my table, in fact, because I treasure that. And I mean, I was learning, and many of my ideas were then incorporated, of course, because we were supposed to do judo. I was in the original, and Ray, the stunt guy.
You have the magic little Google box in your hand. Look it up.
Yes. Anyway, the guy who was arranging all the stunts and the fighting, it was judo, and he said she would never be able to just cut people down with judo. You know, it's got to be karate. And so I said, yes, well, let's do karate. And they said, oh no, Elizabeth, that's too dangerous. They said, well, you know, you would have callus on your hand. It would show. I said, all right, she always wears a glove, or gloves. So, you know, before Michael, what's his name, the singer?
Jackson.
Yeah, Michael Jackson. I could have been, you know, before Michael Jackson with the gloves, you know. And I said to them, you know how many people have a glove fetish? And they said, oh, Elizabeth. That was what I was bringing to it. And of course they did do karate. Anyway.
Speaking of fetish, I just clued into the fact that Emma Peel, your version of it, wore red by your own pushing for that character to wear red. But also Rowena also wore red. And then when we get to the Omen too, weren't you wearing red, and wasn't that your outfit as well? Does red follow you throughout?
Yes.
Is that something you bring to the table, or you just insist your Freudian impulses kicking in?
For Rowena, the second outfit I wear, the blue outfit, was supposed to be my hunting outfit. And I said, oh, no, she'd be wearing hunting red. And so in the end, Roger agreed. So there I am. And the thing was, I'm not a horsewoman. So Dorothy, the stunt woman, trained me to ride side saddle. And quite honestly, I found it easier because on a side saddle, on the saddle, there's a hook on this, you hook this knee over this side, and this other leg is braced between the stirrup and a hook here. I felt very safe. And so there were, she was supposed to do most of the riding. And so there was the horse for the hunt, and then there was a sprightly horse that she would ride, and there was a very docile horse that I was supposed to ride. And I took a look at this docile, this awful sleepy horse. I said, Rowena wouldn't be seen dead on that horse. Give me the spirited one. So I rode on the spirited horse, and I did. She did the jump, but I rode into shot and became a horsewoman because, you know, as an actor, Elizabeth Shepherd is not a horsewoman, but Rowena was. Therefore, I became a horsewoman. And so I enjoyed it. It was fun. When the horse reared, that was Dorothy. And then when I fell off, that was me, and I fell off. Yes. So between us. But you know, this was, it's wonderful. The kind of career that I had, you know, starting all those years ago, I mean, I'm so old now that I've been in this for, well over 60 years. And the profession at the beginning, there were fewer actors and more, well, theatre was it to begin with. And then when television started, all the best writers writing for television, in here too, in the United States, in the late 50s, 60s, wonderful plays on television.
All the great writers left cinema and they went to television during that golden age.
Yes, because it was the new medium, and they would get last year the British Film Institute was showing a film I made in 1961 that was written by John Mortimer called The Encyclopedist. With Cy Grant. I was being sold an encyclopedia. I was a really snazzy kind of young housewife, and he sells me these encyclopedias, and so they wanted me to talk about what it was like in the old days. And of course, they needed theatre actors because we would rehearse the play. And then at the end of rehearsal, the director would bring in camera crews, probably 3 or 4, sometimes even 5 camera crews to cover all the shots. And so we would have dress rehearsals with the camera crew where we would get our marks for the different scenes. And then we would film it all together as one piece, often live. But in any case, we had to film it from beginning to end. So they needed theatre actors who could do that, which is why the shows are so good. Wonderful writers and wonderful theatre actors. And so it was very exciting in those early days in television. And although we were a bit snobby to begin with, I really enjoyed. I did tons of television like that. And these movies that I did as well. But now, you know, I teach Shakespeare at acting academies.
You're still an active teacher.
Oh, yes.
You've been teaching Shakespeare for quite
I've been teaching Shakespeare for a long time. Well, I love Shakespeare, that's a whole other story. The fact that the young ones now, it's become show business. It's all about money. We actors as a profession have been betrayed. Once celebrity came in the old days, if you're the best thing they saw, you'd get the part. Now you can't even get the audition because it's celebrity or not. And in the old days, you know, you're a working actor, your fee goes up according to what you do. Now, celebrity gets, well, I mean, it's the same thing everywhere. The boss, the celebrity, gets millions and millions, and the rest of us get a daily rate.
And we're in a culture now where you can be famous for just being famous. This is the
Oh,
problem.
yes. And you're cast not because you're any good as an actor, but by how many followers you have.
Let's talk about you and I on the ride in had a very brief conversation, but I'd like to explore it a little more. Where you mentioned it, about the Me Too movement, how things have changed for young female actors.
Yes.
And you yourself coming of age on stage, on screen, on television, and maybe having to back a little bit of unwarranted attention yourself. Can you talk about coming of age during that time when nobody was really minding the store?
Oh, that's right. I mean, sleeping for roles, it still goes on, obviously, sometimes. But it was a lot of producers reckoned that was part of their perks. That they would sleep with the young women whom they would cast. And I was asked that all the time. And I would still get cast. For instance, Marty Ransohoff, when I was cast in, I was the original in Americanization of Emily with William Holden. That didn't happen for either of us, so which is why we had to work together again in Damien. But no, I was making a film on Malta, and when we got there, it was Hellboats was the film, and I was to have an affair with James Franciscus. So I said to our English admiral who was advising, why are you giving Malta to the American James Franciscus when the English and the Maltese were very brave in the war? He said, well, yes, we had to buy that, but we insisted you went back to your English husband in the end. Anyway, that particular director, when we got to Malta, said...
Paul Wendkos, right?
Yes, but we don't know if we really want to. Okay. But he said, would you like to work on the script with me? I said, oh, sure, because I thought, oh, good, we're going to rewrite some, make the part better. So I went to his hotel room, and he was going to have dinner with this admiral tonight. I was invited to dinner. And so we got had a drink in our hand and looked at the script. And then suddenly, I was on the bed, and he was launching himself on top of me, and I just laughed in his face. It was so ludicrous, and quite honestly, that's the way to deal with it. And so, anyway, he didn't know what to do then. And so, we never did work on the script. I was disinvited to dinner, and we ended with him advising him whether, should I wear the pink shirt or the yellow one? But there were many occasions where...
We're laughing because of you being a great raconteur, but it's actually quite upsetting.
Oh, but, what if I had slept with him? What if I thought he really likes me? Because the next day, his mistress turned up, and then a few days after that, his wife turned up.
Tangled webs.
And so, well, what would I have thought? I think that, when one is naive at the beginning, you might have thought that the man fell for you. Well, they just wanted, what do you call it, a notch on their belt, So one had to learn that they didn't really mean it. They just wanted to have had Elizabeth Chapman. Right. Oh, I've had her. It was that kind of attitude among men. And thank God that is different now. And I think as far as we're concerned, laughing in their face is probably the best thing to do. I found it worked anyway.
Time is not our friend, unfortunately, so we got to speed up a little bit ahead of time. We talked about, what time do we have now?
49.
Oof, time is definitely our enemy. Let's talk very quickly. We talked about cats, we've talked about horses, but we haven't talked about the birds.
The
Speaking of the birds,
birds,
now
yes,
the
yes.
birds in Damien the Omen 2, you meet this iconic demise in that picture. Insults to injury, assaulted by birds and then mushed by a truck. I mean, it's horrible. But those birds, were they not trained by the gentleman who also trained the birds?
That's
in
right.
Hitchcock's?
I had the best birdman who did the birds for the birds, yes. And so I was supposed to wear a mask of my own face over my face. There were three lots of birds. The long distance bird, Windy, was the bird that was trained to land on that branch. The heavy pecker was called Tuffy, and I worked with Tuffy with the mask on. But that was terrifying because fiberglass is very, very thin.
Sorry, just to be clear, they made a mask
Of my own
protect-
face,
oh,
yeah.
okay.
If you come by my table, I can show you a picture of it. They made the mask before we started. And it's very, very thin fiberglass, so you couldn't see it. But the Tuffy, when he was back, I mean, birds of prey are very strong and their beaks are very sharp. So my eyes were like that inside because he was backing. It was terrifying. I thought he was going to go through the fiberglass. So the original director of the film, Mike Hodges, came to me and said, Elizabeth, we can't do close-ups with the mask. Will you work with Big Boy, the third bird, who was trained to land on black hair, had a wig, and peck blue eyes once. So Big Boy was tied to my black hair with black thread, and I was given hamburger in my fingers. So that as we're running along, I look as if I'm trying to get rid of him, but in fact I'm wafting hamburger. And then, I mean, the poor bird hated it up there because their legs are so thin, you know. So eventually, as we're running and running and running, and then he would fall, still tied with a thread, and I would be holding him in my hand like this. He'd be shaking in my hand, and they'd come and release us. So that was how we managed it in the end.
Nowadays, you'd be mucking about on a green screen, but it wouldn't be as cool.
No, I mean it was.
Well, maybe not so cool for the birds. I don't know.
Yes. I've got a picture out there with me. A portrait of me with Big Bird. I'm holding Big Bird, so me and my fellow actor.
Any of you big boys got any questions for Elizabeth Shipman?
I do.
Yeah.
How long did that scene take to film with the bird and the?
Well, that's a long story because Mike Hodges, who wanted to make a better film, the first film was very, very good. He wanted to make it even better in that he wanted to explore how Damien felt about this role that had been imposed on him. And so, for instance, in the first reading that we did, because he was also a co-writer on the script, the scene between Damien and his cousin, where he's begging his cousin to come with him on this terrible journey, and the boy can't go with him. When we read it to begin before filming, that scene was heartbreaking, heartbreaking. And so he wanted to explore the Damien figure, the character, and also as far as my death is concerned, Hitchcock's way of doing tension is it happens when nobody's expecting it. So when we first filmed my death, there I am, the car's going, I'm getting worried, and so I get out of the car and there's a bird. Oh. So I go back in to get my bag and everything, and so I come out and then, oh, the bird is gone. And then, oh, in the distance, I see those buildings, and I think, oh, safety. So I'm walking, and I and the audience are thinking, oh, good, it's not going to happen now. And that is when it happened.
You actually just made me
So, and that's what we filmed the first time. And Harvey Bernhard said, oh, no, it takes too long. Just get her dead and let's get on to the next death. So we filmed it again, and even what you see now is scary. But I would love to have seen the film that Mike Hodges would have made. Because Harvey Bernhard, they never did, I mean, we talked last night in the Gothic thing, that story of the devil and how one deals with the devil and how the boy may have felt. They didn't go into that. They were only interested in, the films became known for the horrible deaths. And I'm very, very sorry that, as I say, Mike Hodges, who died recently, wonderful director. He was the first director, and so what you see is okay. It's okay, but I'm giving you an idea of what it might have been.
Mike was trying to make an art film. They were trying to push towards an exploitation.
Oh, exploitation, totally. Yes.
Any other questions for Elizabeth? No?
A quick one.
Oh, yeah, okay, from the back, yeah.
Just a quick, the Tomb of Ligeia.
Yes.
At the end of the movie, where every time I've seen it, I always thought it had a happy ending, kind of, where it looked like Rowena had been restored. But then there's been theories that actually she wasn't, that Ligeia was still in control at the last scene of the movie. And I always never thought it was until I saw it most recently. Now I'm not sure anymore. I was wondering, do you think Ligeia is still in control by the end of the film, or Rowena is?
I think that what happens is, and this is, you know, the part of when he's creating the role of Rowena, as I say, she releases him from the spell. But Ligeia is still there. I mean, her body is still there. And so once Verdun then realizes what has happened, and Christopher then takes me as Rowena to safety, and we don't, not knowing whether she is alive or dead. But then I think it is appropriate in the end, and appropriate for the story too, that Verdun does end up with Ligeia. And there we are in the fire at the end. And then, of course, when you see me and Christopher at the end, we realize that I do recover. So, as I said, you know, I think that then Christopher and Rowena have earned a relationship between them. But that, the last scene of the fire, what happened when we were first, Vincent and I, had a fireman allotted to each of us. And my fireman squirted some of that white stuff so that I could see it didn't hurt, you know, if it was needed. And so we were lying there in our place, and the whole set was covered in flammable glue stuff that would sweep through. And before action, suddenly it started to catch fire. And oh, it all flamed and flamed and flamed and flamed and flamed, and then it was getting, we felt it on our feet. And Vincent grabbed me and said, oh, come on, we're getting out of here. And that was a terrible mistake, and of course Roger was absolutely horrified, because the whole thing then had to be set up all over again. So we really nearly did get burned. And I remember Vincent saying to me, I have been singed by fire. In so many Roger Corman films.
And I'm sure everybody knows that at the end of Ligeia, as the rafters are coming down, that footage was the same footage that is on in every single one of the Poe films.
Yes.
Before the house burns, and Roger had filmed in the film with Floyd Crosby, filmed the guy's barn. They paid the farmer off a little bit. They lit the barn on fire for House of Usher. And they used that footage over and over and over. Economical. See, Roger loved to make movies, but he loved to make money and he loved to save money. We got time for one quickie question before we go.
Well, it was, I don't know how quickly, but I was wondering, what kind of a lesson did you take away after that first, then they let you go for the Avengers in the very beginning, you know, you had lots of good, I was like, yeah, Red Leather was awesome. But, you know, so what did you take away from that? What was some of the wisdom you left with?
From that film?
That Avengers, well, when you were,
Oh, from the Avengers thing.
yeah.
You're talking about just the learning experience
Yeah.
from maybe
Oh,
being
well,
so aggressive on set?
First of all, you know, that particularly for a woman, do not assert yourself until at least the second season when they can't find, and especially coming from a woman. I don't know how much that has changed, but it may not have changed that much when one is in that very commercial situation. But at the time, I mean, it was terribly hurtful because I was filled with enthusiasm. And so I think that particularly actresses, I don't know how much this has changed now because, well, as I say, it's all different. They will cast a celebrity and then they will listen to them. But I think that you have to be, they don't really want to hear from actors. Actors are not taken seriously, particularly, unless they're big stars, unless you are there for the ratings. But to actually value, I mean, in my early days, on Ligeia, for instance, I felt very valued as an actor, and all of us, because Roger valued actors, but producers nowadays don't care a bit. Which is why I say that my profession, which I think is an honorable profession, and I love it, and my heart is broken that we have been betrayed by show business. And so when I'm training all my young students in Shakespeare, they have to create their own work when they come out now, and learn how to be writers and actors and entrepreneurs. And you know, treasure your actors. There's something, it usually, I still feel that it is a noble profession because my father was a minister. He opened his heart in a pulpit to touch his congregation. I, as an actor, opened my heart on a stage in order to touch the hearts in my audience. And on film, I feel as if I'm giving raw material that the director will then choose, the director and editor, which parts they will use to tell the story. But you know, I have to say that as the stage is our medium. I'm entrusted with the whole role. And in film, and of course I work with my audience, you know, with live theatre. In film, I do not meet my audience, except when I come here. And so this is why I love these conventions, because for me to meet you and for us to know each other, you know me from the film, but you know me as me, and I get to know you as you and talk to you. This is what I treasure and love about coming here. So I'm very, very pleased to meet you.
Value your actors, value this actor. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you. Folks, we work at the table. We have many, many more stories to tell. We barely scratched the surface. Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
We might have been getting a break.
Oh,
we didn't go so far over. Yeah, let's go like maybe the next thing. Let's go outside.
She said we know when you travel, and she said So first I thought, well, I don't want to just like,
A wonderful actor, but a wonderful person. And I always found that the biggest stars were absolutely friendly with no style at all.